Hi, I'm Ray with another ghostly tale for you. A friend of mine once, we were having a chat and he said, you know the field opposite the chip shop? And I said, yeah, I know, by the woods, yeah, I know. He said, oh, it's haunted over there. And I said, oh, okay, right. I said, well, what do you mean? How do you know that? Oh, people have seen ghosts, he said. You're into that, aren't you? And I wasn't into ghosts as such. I mean, I'd had some experiences that I probably shouldn't have told him about. So I said, well, yeah, well, what are these ghosts? What do you mean? Who's told you this? And he said, oh, there's a bit of a rumour going about the field. He said, you know the chip shop, opposite the chip shop? I said, yeah, I know what you mean. He said, you know that you've got the woods and then on the left there's the field, the farm, and he described this place. I said, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's an old horse trough there, just by this sort of field thing. And he said, people have seen ghosts there. You ought to have a look. Some weeks later, someone gave me a camera. Was it Nikon or Pentax? What was that reflex? Oh, I forget what it was called. I wasn't into photography, but this friend of mine was. And he bought a new camera. And he gave me the old one. So I bought a roll of film for it. Do you remember rolls of film? Like, oh dear, happy days. So I put this roll of film in the camera. And I went over to the woods to see if I could get any wildlife. Birds and rabbits, whatever, anything I could see, squirrels or whatever. And I used up a whole roll of film. And I had another roll, and I thought I'll take some more pictures, because in those days you had to take the roll of film to the chemist, what's now called the pharmacy, isn't it, or whatever. And you had to take the film in, wait a week, go back and collect your photos, collect the prints. Unlike today, you take a photo, oh, I don't like that one, take another one, oh yeah, that one's all right, it's instant. I had to wait a week. On the way back from the woods, I got a fox actually, and one or two other interesting things. And I passed this bit of the field where the horse trough, the drinking thing was for the horses. And I thought I'd take a couple of photos of that, just so I could say to him, is this where you mean? Because I can't see anything. I stood there for a little while, trying to sense, I don't know what I tried to do, not is there anybody there? It wasn't like that. I'm just trying to open my mind and relax, and I felt nothing, absolutely nothing at all. I think I had about 5 photos left on the second roll of film, so I just snap around this bit of field, basically to use up the roll of film so I could take it in to get it developed. A week later, I went to collect the photographs. They were good, really nice camera actually, excellent quality photographs. The 5 that I had of the field I looked at, there appeared, especially in one of them, there appeared to be images of people. How can I describe it? Transparent, translucent figures. Definitely 3, if not 4. There were 2 younger, looked like children, a man behind them, and it looked like a 4th figure that I couldn't quite make out. I might have got that wrong. The other 4 photos had sort of blurry figures, and my immediate thought was, has the camera let light in? Is this a reflection of something? But it wasn't. I mean, I was in the open countryside. There was nothing there. So I didn't show this chap. I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell anyone, because they would have said, oh, that's good. That's a good trick. That looks really effective. How did you fake that? I thought, I'm not going down that route. But what I did do, I showed this girlfriend of mine. I hadn't seen her. She'd been working, she worked in a hospital and she was doing night shift. I hadn't seen her for a couple of weeks. And I showed her the photos. I said, look, pictures of ghosts. And she laughed and she said, well, how did you do that? And I said, that's exactly the reason I haven't shown anyone. And she said, no, I believe you. At first she thought it was some kind of fake that I've managed to do, because funnily enough, we'd been talking about fake flying saucer photos some month or 2 before. Someone will fling a hubcap from a car in the air, take a photo, and oh look, there's a flying saucer. It's all silly. But she said, that's really interesting. Sorry about the bangs in the background. You can hear that. It's November the 5th. It's firework night, bonfire night. Anyway, that's all beside the point. She said, let's go and take more photos, which we did. We took a load more photos. I was spending a fortune on rolls of film. It wasn't cheap, but with a developing process as well. I spent, I don't know how much, but I bought a load more film, taking photos all over this field. Absolutely nothing. Wait a week, go to the chemist, get the films. Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. Lynne, I should have mentioned her name before. Lynne was looking at all the photos. She spread them all out on the table and she's studying them all. She got the 5 with the so-called ghosts, where you could see those clearly, and then all the other photos of the field, absolutely nothing. And I was getting bored. I was like, oh, come on, let's go down the pub. Oh, no, look at the photos. And she said, after about 20 minutes, she said, there's a difference between the photos. And I said, well, what do you mean there's a difference? I took photos of the field. And she said, look at them. I looked at the 5, where you could see the images, looked at the others, where just an empty field, and I said, I can't see, what do you mean? And she said, was it raining on that first time you got the photos with the images in? And I said, actually it was fine drizzle. I said, why? What's that got to do with it? And she said, don't just an idea I'm throwing about, don't laugh. Do you think possibly the rain somehow made them show up, illuminated them, somehow made them visible? And I said, well, I remember saying, I'm not laughing at you at all. I said, this is the first clue as to possibly why we got images in those and not in any of the others. And she said, well, it was raining. She laughed. She said, what are you doing out in the rain with your camera? I said, well, it was the first time I got the camera. I wanted to take some photos. It was only drizzle and I went out in the rain. So anyway, we decided to take more photos the next time it rained. Now this was the summer, and can you believe it? When you want it to rain, it doesn't. When you don't want it to rain, it does. We waited 6 weeks. It didn't rain for 6 weeks. I couldn't believe it. Every day, this is the forecast. Oh, no rain, no drought, all this business. Don't use hose pipes, there's no rain. Oh, goodness me. Then it rained. It rained. And we went to the field, got the camera. I'd already bought half a dozen rolls of film, again spending a fortune. We got to the field, it's raining, not monsooning or anything, just that fine wetting, that wet rain, as a friend of mine calls it, still does, wet rain, she says. So I took a load of photos, about 6 rolls of film. How many photos are on a roll? About 12 were there? I can't remember. Loads of photos of the field. Took all the rolls of film into the chemist, and by this stage the woman there was saying, you're doing well with your photography, and I passed her 6 rolls of film, and we had to wait a week. Now then, would you believe it? On almost every photo there were images. Some were a squeaky chair, some were really clear, others were, you look at it, you think, is that, yeah, I can just about see it. So they were varying, but just about every photo on 6 rolls of film, we had the images. Of course, she was saying, that's it, it's the rain. The ghosts are only there in the rain. And I said, well, I don't know, are they only there in the rain? I don't know why they only come out in the rain. Or are they there all the time and somehow the rain is making them visible? I don't know. We didn't know what to think. But what we did know was that there were ghosts in that field. Now, she, unbeknown to me, she had a friend at the council, and she rang me one day and she said, guess what? So I said, don't you hate it when people say, guess what? I mean, guess what? I said, I don't know, go on, you tell me. She said, there was a house in that field. So I said, oh, right, yeah. I said, well, it's farmland, there's probably all sorts of old buildings there once. And she read, was it 60 or 70 years ago, I think she said, this friend at the council had looked into it. And there'd been a house there, exactly where we'd taken the photos. And she reckoned the horse trough, which was an old concrete thing, not the later metal ones, and it was not used. It was just a derelict horse trough. She reckoned that was outside the house. So we went and had a look. It wasn't raining. We had a look, and you could just about see the outline of the foundations of possibly where the house would have stood, or if there was a house there. She seemed to think this friend of hers had looked into it and there was definitely a house. So we realised from that the people we were seeing were standing in the house, or would have been, had the house still been there, standing in the house, which was rather odd. Horse trough outside, the foundations of the house, that must have been a farmhouse, or I don't know, a building that's rented out to a tenant, or whatever, I don't know. The next time it rained, we went along to the field. I didn't take the camera because I thought there's no point. I've got so many photos, so many rolls of film I bought and developed, and there are photos everywhere of these spirit people. So the next time we went, we're looking. And we were wondering why we couldn't see these people. It was the fine drizzly rain. Why can't we see the people with our eyes? How come only the camera could see them? It was all rather strange. And then Lynne said to me, "What's that?" And I'm thinking, what have you seen? She said, "Oh, listen, what's that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Hissing noise." And I said, "Oh, that's the pylon." There was an electricity pylon just by the field, just out of all my camera shots. This big electricity pylon, high voltage lines. And I said, what that is, that's the insulators when they're wet. The high voltage leaks across them and it hisses. And I mentioned corona discharge, that you might see at night when it's dark. And she looked at me, and she was a clever girl, actually. She was a very clever girl. And she said, "So that could be coupled with the rain and the ghost." I said, "Well, it's certainly coupled to the rain, because when the insulators get wet, they hiss." And I said, "You get the corona discharge." And she said, "What's this corona stuff?" I remember the way she put it. "What's this corona stuff?" And I said, "Well, you can see there's like a glow, a purple or blue glow around the lines, the insulators, because of the extremely high voltage." And she said, "Do you think there's some kind of radiation from this corona thing that's lighting up the ghosts?" And I thought for a minute, that's an idea, isn't it? That kind of would make sense. I don't know whether it was ultraviolet it was giving off, or X-rays. I mean, high voltages can give off X-rays. Was there some light being emitted from the hissing insulators that was somehow illuminating, I don't know, and making the ghosts visible? It seemed like a reasonable assumption. Well, reasonable assumption. We couldn't think of anything else, but it did fit in with the rain. Being the clever girl that she was, she then said, "Okay, in the camera, is it the film or the lens that is showing the people?" And I immediately said, "Well, it's the film, isn't it? The film can somehow show that it's been developed on the film. Why would it be the lens?" And she said, "No, hang on a minute." She said, "Do you think it is, just forget the film, what if it's just the lens?" So I said, "Well, I wasn't quite following her." And she said, "Have you got any binoculars?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Right, let's get the binoculars." I said, "Right, you stay here." She said, "I'm not staying here." I only lived up the road. She said, "We'll both go." We went back to my place, got my binoculars, went back to the field. Pylons, insulators are hissing away, very fine, that wet rain. And I've got the binoculars and I'm looking at the field. And I could see 4 people, as I said before, like translucent, transparent-ish. Definitely 2 children and a man and a woman. And I could see it. I passed the binoculars to her. I said, "Look, am I seeing things?" And she looked. And good God, she said, "I can see the people. I can see them." So it was the camera lens that was somehow, I don't know. So I looked up at my turn again, I'm looking at the people. I looked up at the the insulators. You could see the corona discharge all around the hissing insulators. Fantastic. I've always loved high voltage electricity. Well, not to get near it, obviously. I'm looking back down again and I can see the people. So I said I said, you watch me. She got the binoculars. I said, I'm going to go forward, see what they do. So she's watching and I went into the field. She said, go a bit more, yeah. She said, just turn left, go a bit left and you'll be facing one of the older people. So I did that. And she said, hold your hand out. So I put my hand. And she said, it's the man. He's holding his hand out. He's touching your hand. Of course, I couldn't see a thing. So she said, can you feel anything? And I said, well, I don't think so, no. In imagination, you think, oh, is that tingling or is that cold? I'm sure I couldn't feel anything. So I went back and got the binoculars from her. And I'm walking towards this chap with the binoculars. And I could see him. And I put my hand out, and he did. And we're kind of shaking hands with each other. I'm sitting through the binoculars. I could see it was a man's face, but I couldn't, no features or anything like that really. It was eerie, to say the least. There's the pylon insulators hissing just above and beside the field. It was just absolutely weird. And then Lynne came across and she did the same with the lady. She had the binoculars and shook hands with the lady. Absolutely amazing. With the binoculars, by the way, I must just add that I did try focusing. That didn't make any difference. The chap was just there. What I saw, the chap was just there in front of me. The fact that the binoculars weren't focused didn't seem to make any difference. So I have no idea how it all worked, what was going on, what was being emitted from the hissing insulators. I don't know what was going on. A few days later, Lynne came round. We were going to go out for a meal. She came round and she said, my friend from the council has got back to me with more information. The house, 60 or 70 years ago, the house burnt down and the family of 4 perished in the fire. And I said, well, that's the family of 4. She said, exactly, that's it. The house burnt down. They cleared the rubble, cleared the site, and I don't know why they left the horse trough there. The pylon was a later addition, presumably. She didn't say that, but presumably that was a later addition. And you could, as I said, you could just about see the outline of where the foundations were or still were under the ground. So the incredible thing was that we were seeing the people that would have been in the house that had burnt down. They perished. I went along to our local spiritualist church. I've mentioned this before. I knew 1 or 2 people there. And I told the whole story to this lady, this psychic lady. I showed her the photos and she went along to the field. And next time I saw her, she said, I've sent them on their way, as she put it. Sent them on their way. They're all right now. So I went along to the field with Lynne. The next time it was raining, binoculars, camera, hissing electricity, nothing, absolutely nothing. The people had gone. About a year after that, I put the photos up in the attic, up in the loft. I just wanted them somewhere safe. I got them down. Lynne and I we're still together. We were talking about it. And I said, let's look through the photos. I got them down from the loft. Dozens and dozens of photos of this field. All the images had gone. They'd faded away. The field was there. All the images had faded away, as if they'd never been there. Now, we looked at each other. We didn't dream this, did we? No, of course we didn't. It was real. It had happened. But all we had was photos of the field. All the images of the people had disappeared. What a shame, because I would love to. I was going to keep the photos. I'd said to her, I'm going to keep these for life. These are fantastic. But the images faded away. Whenever I'm out and about, if it's raining, I'm out and about in the car. If I see a pylon, I know 1 or 2 locally, I'll sometimes go and stand at the bottom of the pylon and I listen. I look up and listen. And you can hear that hissing, that corona discharge, the insulators leaking, the extremely high voltage electricity. And I look round, I always look round. I take binoculars with me as well. I don't always remember that, but sometimes I look round with the binoculars. Nothing. I've never seen anything since. But I'm still attracted to that fantastic hissing noise of the high voltage electricity.